That night, in the familiar comfort of his home, an elderly man passed away suddenly. It was a quiet departure, with no prior warning or sign of distress. The stillness in the air seemed heavier than usual, as if the house itself was holding its breath. His family, unaware of what had just happened, continued with their routines, blissfully unaware that something extraordinary was about to unfold. As the hours passed, the realization began to sink in. His absence was felt in the quiet echoes of the house. The chair he often sat in seemed emptier. The ticking of the old clock in the living room grew louder, filling the void left behind. Yet no one could anticipate what would happen next, a phenomenon so strange it would leave everyone in the family in awe. When morning came, the family gathered in the living room, trying to process the events of the night before. It was then that someone noticed the antique clock on the mantel. Its hands, which had always moved steadily for as long as they could remember, were now frozen. The time displayed on the clock matched the exact moment the elderly man had passed away. The family was stunned. The clock, an heirloom that had been in the house for generations, had never stopped working. For years it had been a reliable timekeeper, marking the passage of life in the household. Now it stood as though it had paused, bearing witness to the moment when one life ended. The family couldn't help but feel that this was no coincidence. Some said the clock had seen the man's soul depart, as if it had marked the exact moment of his transition. Others were simply struck by the profound silence of the house, as if it too was mourning. This moment became a profound memory for the family, a symbol of how time, love, and loss are intertwined. It was as though the stillness of the clock mirrored the stillness of their hearts, pausing in a moment of deep reflection and connection. In the quiet living room, the antique clock stood proudly on the mantel, a symbol of reliability and tradition. For decades, its rhythmic ticking had been a comforting background sound in the household, marking the passing of hours and days without fail. It had witnessed family gatherings, moments of joy, and times of sorrow, always moving forward, never faltering. But now something was different. The steady ticking was gone. The silence that replaced it was almost deafening, as if the clock itself had joined the house in mourning. A family member, noticing the absence of sound, approached the clock. Its hands were frozen, pointing to a specific time. Confused, they checked their own watch, and a shiver ran down their spine. The time on the clock matched exactly the moment the elderly man had taken his last breath. The realization spread through the family, bringing with it a mix of emotions, grief, awe, and a profound sense of mystery. The clock, which had faithfully marked the passage of time for so long, had now stopped, as though it too recognized the significance of the moment. It was as if the clock had paused in reverence, acknowledging the transition of a life it had silently accompanied for years. Some in the family believed it was merely a coincidence, a mechanical failure that happened to align with the man's passing. But others couldn't dismiss the significance of the timing. How could it be that the clock, an object so tied to the rhythm of their lives, had chosen this exact moment to stop? For them it was more than a coincidence. It was a sign, a symbolic marker of the man's departure from the physical world. The room felt heavier now, filled with an air of solemnity. The stopped clock stood as a silent witness, a reminder of the fragility of time and the mysteries that surround life and death. Its frozen hands seemed to say that, for one moment, time itself had paused to honor the man's passing. As the family sat together, they reflected on the strange event. The clock, once just an object, had become something more. It was a connection between the physical and the spiritual, a bridge between worlds. Whether it was a coincidence or something beyond their understanding, the stopped clock became a cherished symbol of that night, a moment where time, love, and mystery intertwined. As the family gathered in the living room the next morning, their grief was heavy. The air was still, and the house seemed quieter than usual. One family member, drawn by an uneasy feeling, turned their attention to the antique clock on the mantel. The clock, a familiar fixture in the household, had always ticked steadily, its rhythmic sound blending into the background of their daily lives. But now the clock was silent. Its hands were frozen at a specific time. A curious glance soon turned into shock when they realized that the time displayed on the clock matched exactly the moment the elderly man had passed away. The family exchanged bewildered looks, their sadness momentarily replaced by awe and confusion. Could this be a coincidence? They wondered aloud. The clock had been in perfect working order the day before, faithfully marking the hours and minutes without fail, but now its stillness seemed deliberate, almost purposeful, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to stop. Some members of the family believed it was just a mechanical failure, an uncanny alignment of timing, but others couldn't ignore the significance. To them it felt like a sign, a silent witness to the man's final moments. It was as though the clock, a quiet observer of their lives for so many years, had paused in reverence, marking the precise moment his soul left this world. The room grew heavier with the weight of their thoughts. The stopped clock became more than just a broken timepiece. It was a symbol, a connection between the physical and the spiritual. Its frozen hand seemed to carry a message, an acknowledgement of the transition from life to the unknown. As they stood around the clock, the family couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. It was as if the clock, in its stillness, had captured a sacred moment, one that went beyond the boundaries of time and space. The once ordinary object now held a deeper meaning, reminding them of the mysteries that surround life and death. For days, the stopped clock became a topic of reflection. The family would glance at it with a mixture of sadness and reverence, feeling that it had shared in their loss. Whether by coincidence or something greater, the clock had etched itself into their memories, a silent companion to the most profound moment of their lives. There are those who believe that the stopping of the clock was not just a random mechanical failure. To them it was something far deeper, an extraordinary reaction to the spiritual energy released at the moment of the man's passing. They see the clock as more than a timekeeping device. It became a silent witness to the profound transition of a soul leaving this world. In the realm of spirituality, it's often said that the energy of a person doesn't simply disappear when they pass away. Instead, it lingers, subtly influencing the physical world around them. Objects that are meaningful, or those that have been a constant presence in someone's life, are thought to resonate with this energy. An antique clock, steeped in history and intertwined with a family's daily existence, becomes more than an object. It becomes a keeper of time, memory, and emotion. When the clock stopped at the exact moment of the man's death, it seemed to mark a shift, as though time itself had paused to acknowledge the moment. For those who believe in the power of spiritual energy, the stopped clock wasn't a coincidence, but a symbolic gesture, a quiet acknowledgement of the soul's departure. The idea is that objects, especially those with emotional significance, can respond to the energy of the people around them. In this case, the clock stopping at such a precise moment was seen as an alignment between the physical and the spiritual. It was as if the clock, which had always been a part of the man's life, joined in the final farewell, its hands freezing to mark the transition from one realm to another. Skeptics might dismiss this as superstition or chance, but for those who experienced it, the timing was too perfect, too meaningful to ignore. The stopped clock became a symbol of connection, a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. It reminded the family that even in the midst of loss, there are moments that transcend explanation, moments where the invisible forces of life and death make themselves known. For the family, the clock now carried a deeper significance. It wasn't just a timepiece anymore. It was a reminder of the mysterious bond between the living and the departed. Whether as a spiritual marker or a meaningful coincidence, the stopped clock became a lasting part of their story, a reflection of the unseen energy that connects us all. Some spiritualists believe that when a person passes away, the energy of their soul doesn't simply vanish. Instead, it lingers, radiating out and influencing the physical world around them. According to this belief, certain objects, particularly those that hold emotional or historical significance, are sensitive to this energy and may react to it. Events like a clock stopping at the exact moment of death are often seen as more than coincidence. They are considered signs of the soul's transition from one world to the next. The idea is rooted in the concept that everything in the universe is connected by unseen forces. When a soul departs, it creates an energetic shift that can leave an imprint on its surroundings. This energy, some say, can speak through objects in subtle yet profound ways. A stopped clock, for instance, might serve as a marker of the precise moment a life ends, symbolizing the passage from the physical to the spiritual realm. The stopped clock is more than just an anomaly. It's seen as a moment of connection between two worlds. For those who believe, the clock's frozen hands serve as a reminder that time, as we know it, is no longer relevant to the departed soul. Instead, it signifies the beginning of a new journey, one that transcends earthly constraints. For families who experience such phenomena, The event can bring comfort amidst grief. The stopped clock becomes a silent witness, acknowledging the significance of the moment. It's as though the object itself has paused in reverence, reflecting the stillness and transition occurring in that instant. Skeptics may dismiss this as nothing more than chance or a mechanical failure, but for those who believe, the timing is too precise, the symbolism too meaningful to ignore. These moments become a powerful reminder of the mysteries that surround life and death, offering a glimpse into the unseen connections that link us all. The stopped clock is not just a tool for measuring time, it becomes a symbol of love, memory, and the ongoing presence of the departed. It serves as a bridge between the living and the spiritual, reminding us that even in loss there is connection. To those who believe, these moments are not coincidences. They are profound messages that transcend explanation, offering comfort and a sense of the divine in life's most difficult moments. We sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch this story. If it touched your emotions or made you reflect, please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. We truly appreciate your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel, so you won't miss more inspiring and meaningful stories. Your feedback and encouragement are the driving force for us to continue bringing thoughtful content. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.